Louisiana. I wanted to see the swamp country. I wanted to feel the Gulf air. I wanted to understand the things that have been fed to me on the news after floods and in creepy backwoods horror movies. Louisiana seemed like this mysterious place where jazz music started and people knew how to have a good time. I presumed that all this history had to do with celebrating the survival of everyday life. 400 years of colonization, natural disasters, and gators gave me the presumption that the people of the bayou are constantly figuring out how to survive. There truly is culture there, and my Midwest ass may be in for a culture shock. As I slowly crept east into Louisiana, I noticed a gradual change in scenery. I went from plains and grassy meadows to countless bodies of water and plant life so thick that I don't think even a chainsaw could clear through it. I appreciated the buzzing sound of nature coming from the humid surroundings, full of life and movement, though that life could be your worst nightmare if you're afraid of things that go bump in the night. Due to large tracts of water, the state utilizes a lot of bridges. Crossing over the border into Bridge City, Louisiana, on 73 Highway required that I scale what the locals called Rainbow Bridge. As I would later find out, this bridge was similar to most other bridge designs in the South. We have a man by the name of Huey Long to thank for a lot of these impressive structures. The state built steel multi-story bridges that would span even miles long and grow to the size of skyscrapers. This particular Rainbow Bridge was damn near the same as going up a roller coaster ride and reaching at least 5 stories tall. I thought I had gotten used to climbing mountains by now, but my legs had to work hard to push up that son of a gun. I came across a church-sponsored yard sale and decided to take a peek. I bought a couple of trinkets and a few chocolate chip cookies from the kind folks. They talked my ear off briefly and helped me understand what to expect in the South. They told me about the kind of people I would meet, but also warned me of dire news they had heard recently about kidnappings and murders in the area. It's always good to keep reality in my head. That night, I was hosted by a fantastic woman named Rachel. After being widowed and surviving breast cancer, she decided to spend the rest of her life giving back to the community by offering free tax services for low-income families. When I arrived, she was already waiting on the front lawn. She hugged me and welcomed me into her home. She grew up there in Sulphur, Louisiana, and explained how it was currently overrun by the oil industry. It was the only reason anybody who didn't grow up there ended up there. $1 billion expansion to an oil refinery and multiple new refineries were built in the area. All the expansion and population growth was causing problems for food and housing supply. Landlords were kicking tenants off their mobile home plots to convert the properties into RV parks so they could house more people for higher profits. Gentrification at its best. The locals felt like big oil had come in and created this enormous problem, and when the oil dried up, the city was left in ruins. It's a sad example of corporate greed, and it happens nationwide when regulations do not protect communities or consumers. After I got settled in, Rachel invited me to go out with her and some girlfriends to a Zydeco bar. I happily obliged, and a great night followed. This bar was filled with kids in the 45-plus age range, and I hadn't seen a happening scene like this since my early 20s. As I've become older, concerts have never felt as energetic as when I was in high school. A Zydeco band was playing, and they seemed to be a crowd favorite. If you can imagine, accordion-led Americana played for swing dancing. These guys could rock out. The lead man had 3 different accordions, custom made in different keys. He was seemingly a local legend, and all the women swooned over him. I started out just tapping my feet and taking in the experience when suddenly one of the ladies grabbed me to go out and dance. We shuffled around for a couple of songs, and she threw me to another partner, eventually dancing with Rachel. It was a great time. After a couple of hours and a few rounds of dancing, someone suggested we get food. Next door, there was a crawfish boil going on, so we joined in. As I was about to order, one of the ladies asked how hungry I was, and she said she'd take care of it. About 15 minutes later, they came out with a massive cast iron bowl with 3 pounds of crawdaddies, all for me. It was my first time, so I asked them how I was supposed to eat them. In that same moment, the band's lead singer came out of nowhere and asked me if it was my first time eating crawfish. He went on to explain that I would have to learn how to suck the head as a rite of passage. He showed me the technique where you twist the head off and suck the insides in one gulp. Since I was ignorant, I decided to show off and prove myself, so I sucked the head, and it was a little weird. After the table was done teasing me, the ladies showed me the standard way to eat them, which is to twist the head off and pull the tail out to get the best meat. I finished the 3 pounds of Cajun spice and was content with my Louisiana experience. I noticed many roadways flooded over, which overcame me with sadness. I thought about all the tragedies of hurricanes and floods devastating these communities. I wondered how people chose to live here even with all the risk. How the culture is so vital that even the water isn't going to stop their way of living. I learned that Louisiana categorized their cities as cores, and instead of counties, they have parishes. I read this was a remnant from the Spanish and French colonization, precisely due to the Roman Catholic Church. Our country seems so antiquated sometimes. Though I had the luxury of a few host homes, I still had to rough it and camp in the swamp. I attempted to open-air camp the night before I arrived in Baton Rouge. Chris had encouraged me to try open-air camping in California, but I still hadn't mustered up the courage. This particular day, I rode until dark and ended up in a small town with only a Walmart. Due to the thick woods, there weren't many good places to hide and camp. Plus, the potential for standing water was obvious. I found a grass clearing between some bushes off the road and posted up. It was next to a big church, and I prayed that I was hidden enough from the road's view. I used my tent fly to cover myself from the bugs like a blanket and crossed my fingers that I'd get some sleep. I was exhausted from the 12 hours of riding and thought I could guarantee a great sleep. Once I closed my eyes, everything changed. My ears became hypersensitive to every noise that was close by. Let me tell you, a spring night in Louisiana has a lot of sounds. At some point, I started to hear dripping water. I realized the gutters of the building were accumulating moisture from the humidity. I was directly beneath the drip path. My body stayed awake until 2 a.m. I changed sleeping positions all night and could not get comfortable or feel safe with all the noise. I slept less than 2 hours and ultimately woke up at 4 a.m. That's when I decided to pack up and start riding. I was bummed, exhausted, and wanted a cool bed with clean sheets. My situation didn't get much better after I packed up and hit the road. I had to cross a 4-lane highway and realized there was a grass ditch between the wide roads. As I tried to cross it, I found it was too wet for me to traverse. It was pitch black outside, mind you. I started to back my bike up the grassy hill to straighten out and ended up tripping over myself and landing on the ground. Somehow, in the middle of that, my foot got caught in the spokes of my back wheel and I was stuck. I was a little scared considering I was next to a 65-mile-an-hour highway, flailing around, trying to escape this nightmarish predicament. Fortunately, I made it out safely and promptly found the closest paved turnaround to ride in the right direction out of town. I stopped into Walmart for a snack and realized I wasn't in much better shape than everyone working the graveyard shift. We were all zombies, wondering what our lives amounted to. While riding through a largely flooded and swampish area, I started across a bridge that I could not see the end of. It was completely flat, but not in good condition. There were 4 lanes, but they seemed to be designed for very small vehicles. It took me close to 45 minutes to span the length of this bridge, which left me a lot of time to think. I imagined the natural biomes all around me and enjoyed the quiet sounds of nature. As meditative as that experience was, it was also nerve-wracking. I didn't trust the drivers out there. I'd already had a couple negative encounters with drivers honking and passing me too close on purpose. You also get the guys who smoke you out with their tailpipes. One guy honked at me and then yelled, "Sidewalk!" His truck had a chain swinging from the hitch, holding 2 industrial-sized nuts. The poor, manly man doesn't have enough room to share the road with a vulnerable cyclist. I must have offended his manhood. When I entered Baton Rouge on Highway 190, the only thing that stood between me and my host home was an enormous 10-story bridge that crossed the Mississippi River. An intimidating ascent and 2 lanes on each side. There was no shoulder, it was rush hour, and only a curb's length between the road and a handrail that kept me from a perilous fall into the river. It was stressful, to say the least. These bridges were built in sections and had 6-inch gaps where they connected. The gaps kept inching wider and wider, and I pushed closer and closer to the curb. The speed limit was 50 miles an hour, and the cars weren't sure what to make of a cyclist crossing this bridge. They probably all figured I had a death wish, which maybe I did. I wasn't convinced I could survive any accident in that situation, because I would be done if even one semi got too close to me. It felt like a tightrope, hoping a rearview mirror didn't knock me off the top of this structure. During the 20 minutes it took to cross, I thought of peril and tried to stay focused enough to push myself forward instead of being writhed in fear. I finally got to the top and started my descent, riding my brakes the whole way down, so the steel connectors wouldn't eject me to my death. When I finally reached the bottom, I sat beside the "Welcome to Baton Rouge" sign for quite a while. I tried to calm my nerves and dust the fear out of my brain. I felt accomplished for getting across, but I also felt the harsh realization that my life was not in my hands on this trip, or any time I rode my bicycle. I'm at the will of motor vehicles and the shittily designed roadways of America. I can will myself to success, but death is constantly a reality out here on the road. I stayed with a friend of a friend named Josh that night. Josh explained how Baton Rouge is a very impoverished community. While riding through it, I could see the obvious wealth divides. Josh and I had a lot in common, which was a fun surprise. He was a drummer in a doom metal band and worked for an audio hardware company. The company was based in Baton Rouge, and he owned a house there with his fiancée at the time. His father was an avid cyclist, and he showed me a map that highlighted every path he's biked. He did a 4,000-mile tour from Washington down to the East Coast, and he'd finished numerous statewide rail trails. His dad told me about a national historic road that served as an excellent path for cycling into Alabama. It was called the Natchez Trace and started in Natchez, Mississippi, about 90 miles north of Baton Rouge. I decided to skip my planned coastal route through New Orleans and follow this Natchez Trace alternatively. It sounded fun and safe and had free camping. It was bittersweet to change course, but it seemed entirely worth it. We all shared great stories that night, but eventually had to go to sleep. I was mentally preparing for a significant detour.